Sasha Martinengo.
Storming down the pit lane.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time on ballz.co.za.
Attend the event, which was Eddie Izzard. Now, just to give you a little bit of a background as to what has happened, Eddie Izzard came out beginning of last year to do a series of shows in South Africa. Loved it so much, decided he wanted to come and do something. Now, if you go back 3 or 4 years in the life of Eddie Izzard, he ran 43 marathons in 43 days. Okay, all for a good cause and for charity and for some of his political opinions. And here's a man who's incredibly intellectual, incredibly bright, and brilliantly funny as well. So he decided he wanted to, when he came to South Africa, he wanted to learn about the history of our country. And he went around and learnt a lot about our past history from Jan van Riebeeck, and he told us about it last night, all the way through until us as a new democracy 18 years later, and of course our first president, Nelson Mandela. And he pledged to come out to South Africa and run 27 marathons in 27 days. That's what his objective was. Unfortunately, and he admitted it to us last night, after the 4th marathon, his doctors basically came to him and said, listen, Eddie, we don't think you should continue. They did some checks on him, and it was decided that he was going to suspend the initiative. He has said he will be back and will do the 27 in 27 days in honor of Nelson Mandela. Okay, so last night he was in South Africa and he had stopped all of the marathons, and he decided, you know what, I owe something to the South Africans. Let me put on a little show. So 200 people were invited, or not invited, you bought your tickets. I fortunately was invited. Go there to watch Eddie Izzard. First up was Kagiso Ledige, who came on, did a 20-minute little set, which was really, really cool. And then Eddie Izzard came on. Now, Eddie Izzard is not only a comedian, he's an actor, he's a voiceover artist, he is a campaigner, he's a very sharp, bright man. So he comes on and he tells us a bit about our history, where I think a lot of us actually learned quite a lot of things. And then he did his a sort of a 10-minute version of how the world is, and he ended off his comedy show with, I think, one of the best sketches I've ever seen, and it's going to be made into a documentary, so hopefully you'll all be able to get to see it as well. But he had basically these two Roman centurions having a discussion with each other in Latin. Okay, it was hysterically funny, but genius, complete genius. All right. Then, after that, he said, listen, we're going to have an interval now, just for 10-15 minutes, and then we're going to have a Q&A session, which I thought, this is just going to be extraordinary. You know, we're going to have a chance to actually ask Eddie Izzard a question, you know, about his career, about how he broke in the States, how long it took to write his material, etc., all of that kind of stuff. So we went outside, had a little chat, went back into the theater, 200 of us, and he opened up the floor. Kagiso was on the stage, so was Eddie Izzard. And the first question came around, which was something silly. So it didn't start off too well. But then Eddie Izzard sat, and he basically took the floor, and he said, listen, you know, it's 18 years. I want to learn more about your country and what it's about. So how is it going so far after 18 years? And immediately, some absolute moron stands up and starts talking about the president's the painting and the picture and how disgraceful it is, that there's no respect, etc., etc. Now, you've got to understand, Eddie Izzard knows nothing about this painting. He knows nothing about what is going on, and he's looking perplexed because he's now trying to figure out what's going on. Whereas, and this was a well-known comedian, by the way, who stood up and started ranting and ranting and ranting. And I was sitting there going, you are now embarrassing the whole of South Africa with this complete nonsensical conversation that you're trying to have with Eddie Izzard, basically trying to impress him. So we tried to move on from that, but it didn't really work. So the next question came, and let me just tell you, there was two rows in front of me of up-and-coming South African comedians, some of them sort of known, some of them not really well known. Now, you have the opportunity okay, and this is to those comedians. I don't even know what their names are. But you have this opportunity, okay, to ask one of the greatest intellectual, progressive comedians in the world a relevant question. Yet our little South African-minded little comedians decided to try and make jokes with Eddie Izzard, to the immense embarrassment of every single person there. Eddie Izzard was trying to have a decent Q&A and explain a bit about his life, how he's got to where he is, what he's achieved. And here we had these monkeys trying to crack a joke with somebody far more intelligent and far more successful than they might ever be. The whole of this Q&A was about these young comedians trying to get their 2 minutes or 5 minutes of fame in an auditorium and in a platform which was completely irrelevant to their cause. I've never, ever been so embarrassed to be a South African as I was last night, with the nonsensical, stupid questions that came from these comedians, having a joke amongst themselves where nobody else knew what they were talking about, and laughing at each other, and Eddie Izzard sitting on the stage going, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're asking. And yet they thought this was incredibly hilarious. To so much of a point that, you know what, my daughter was there with me. And we got into the car and drove home. And this was the saddest thing I heard from a 17-year-old South African girl who said, you know what, Dad? That actually shows why I want to leave this country. It was sad, embarrassing, disrespectful, narcissistic by these young little wannabe comedians who sat there and thought that this audience was about them. You guys have got to grow up, go and explore the big wide world and realize you are nothing compared to what that man has achieved. What you have achieved is insignificant at this stage. Instead of trying to be the hero, why did you not try and be the scholar? Why did you not try and learn from somebody who has done so much, yet you did try and sit there and be complete pricks? Well, you achieved it and you embarrassed us all. And I hope that you are listening right now.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Gears on Ballz.co.za with Sasha Martinengo.
He's kept himself out of trouble.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time.